call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Everyone is present except for Joe. Notice to the public, any member of the public wishing to address the governing board on a topic within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district, but not on the agenda, may do so during the public comment period identified in this agenda. By law, subjects not on the agenda cannot be acted upon by the board except to briefly respond, clarify, or refer to staff for review and presentation at a future meeting. The board president will recognize you for public comment on matters on the agenda at the appropriate time. Correspondence. Consent agenda, we do not have one. Public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? Seeing none. Guests and presentations.
None.
Director's report.
Okay, first thing are library activities. Our summer reading club program has begun. We had our first performance on Monday. Timothy James, a magician who caters to kids, came from Livermore, and we had 105 people for that event.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a good turnout.
Yeah.
So far, we've run the program for 1 week. We have 421 kids signed up.
Oh, great.
Last year we had a total of 452, so it's coming along well. I think it's because Jim's going to all the schools, including the private preschools, to try and promote things. And he's signing up kids there rather than forcing them to come into the library. So I think that'll help with the numbers for us. And then last year we were in between librarians, so I think that was a factor with last year's sign-ups too. Let's see. Personally, I signed up for a class called Getting Grants for Libraries, and that's a month-long online class that I'm taking to try and reinforce some of my skills in grant writing. I've done it in the past, but not recently. Let's see. Next thing is the budget report. If the budget will be delayed till next month. I've made my recommendations, but we're still waiting for some numbers from Solano and from the insurance to finish up doing the budget. It just needs to be approved and submitted by August 31st, so we still have time to do that.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it for the director's report.
Sounds good. Budget update.
Oh, that was it.
That was it.
That was the
Okay.
budget update.
That was the budget update. Okay.
That was both
That
things.
it's tabled until.
Separate, yeah, got it, okay. Update on Miller Building other properties.
Okay, this is the major topic for the
Okay.
evening. Last meeting, I was instructed to look at some options for the Miller Building and the other properties that the library owns. Everybody should have a little plat map here that shows us what properties that the library has. I circled in yellow, highlighted in yellow are our properties. The Miller Building is number 10. The library, current library in Carnegie is number 9. The Lefevre property is number 7, and the Ferrer property is 5 and 6 on here. The rest of it will be either the Women's Improvement Park in that block, or 2, 11, and 12 are private homes on that street. But a little background, the 3 properties that the library owns outside the library are the Miller Building, which is number 10 on the map, as I just said. The library paid $489,000 for that in 2008. The Lefevre property at 193 East B, number 7 on the map, was bought in the same year for $665,000. And the Pereira property, same year, went for $307,000. I talked with the county assessor as to try and get more current numbers on that, but I learned that government buildings and their properties have no assessed value. So we don't have any more up-to-date estimates as to what those buildings and properties might be worth. On kind of a humorous note, I attempted to use the county assessor's database to find out this information. I finally had to call someone because I couldn't get the database to work using either Chrome or Explorer. And then I noticed at the bottom of the screen it says works best with Netscape Navigator. So it's been a while since they've done any work on that. So as far as the future of the Miller Building, we talked about this last time. There's a conflict between the 2013 report from Paul Roberts from Vallejo and the ZFA, who is the latest structural engineer to look at the building, as to whether the building's reinforced or unreinforced masonry. If it's unreinforced masonry, that's notoriously unsound in earthquakes. And if the retrofit was necessary, it would cost over $1 million to retrofit, according to ZFA. Even though we haven't had earthquakes recently here in this area, in 1892, there was a 6.5 earthquake center. The epicenter was 6 miles west of Dixon, and there was extensive damage in Winters and Vacaville, and to a lesser extent here. But they have that earthquake festival every year up in Winters. And celebrates that. So, although earthquakes have been rare, they're certainly a possibility here. So, I talked with Fred Turner, who's the structural engineer for the State Seismic Safety Commission. And he says that a structural engineer should be able to tell whether the building's reinforced or unreinforced by visual assessment. But if that's not conclusive, he gave me a couple of ASTM standards for push and pull tests, so they can determine the strength of mortar in the walls and the wall to roof floor connections. And you should be able to tell what type of building it is from those. He said that you can also tell by using radiography and thermography. He said that those tests are all expensive, but he was unable to give me a ballpark figure as to what expensive means. He suggested going to 3 different structural engineers and getting quotes on what the test would cost. With that information, I asked ZFA, who's the current structural engineer, if he could do those tests and what they would cost. He said that he was familiar with those. He would get back to me with that information, but so far I haven't heard back from him.
And how long has it been?
Uh,
Contacted him?
well, 3 days ago was the last I talked to him.
Okay.
So that's a possibility. I think we should probably explore that and find out exactly what we're dealing with. But that kind of depends what the cost of it would be too. Let's see.
We'd kind of want to know how secure it is before you, even if your intention was to sell it, that way you knew, well, you can tell the person who's buying it, if it's strong or not, or it would have to be a tear down or whatnot.
Yeah.
Could add value, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. In the event that the building wasn't salvageable, I talked to Double B Demolition in Vacaville. They said the cost of knocking down the building and removing the remnants would be $15,000 to $20,000. When I brought up that possibility at our staff meeting last week, there was a lot of negative reaction, and I think there might be negative reaction within the community if we were to go that route.
Price or to the trade-in building?
To the possibility of knocking the building down. Let's see, I met with the city manager, the economic development person for the city, and the community development director last week. And they are open to either a cooperative venture with the library or to perhaps purchase the Lefevre and Pereira properties to expand the park, possibly. They were also interested as a possible location for a Dixon Museum. The Historical Society's been raising money to try to move the building that's at 1120 North First, which is at Stratford. There's kind of an old Victorian house up there that needs to either be destroyed or moved, it seems. So the city was thinking that they might be willing to purchase property that the library owns and move that museum there rather than over near the train station, which was kind of the original idea of the people at the Historical Society. Another thing that I talked with the city about was, I said that maybe we could build an amphitheater for public programs. The library would use it for its programs, and the city might use it for concerts and events too. And the city seemed open to that as a possibility as well. Obviously, it's a good location. There's really nothing else like that in Dixon. And I think it would draw people downtown, which would
Oh,
be
yeah.
good for local businesses, I would think. Those are the main options, I think. The library needs haven't changed. We need more space. We need more office space, a program room for adult and children's programs, and there's been some demand for study rooms as well. So no matter what options we choose, I would like that to come about. I think the library needs to be expanded one way or another, but it kind of hinges on how usable and salvageable the Miller Building is at this point. I think those are the main possibilities. Right now, as far as cash that the library has, we have $560,000 cash in treasury, and the land, we spent almost $1.5 million nearly 10 years ago to buy the Miller Building and those other properties. So I really have no idea what those properties might be worth if we chose to sell part or all of those properties.
That's really good information, all of that.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Yeah, that was really thorough. So we have this on here for information, discussion, action. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
Nope.
I guess not at this time. Not at this time.
So what direction do we want to give Steve at this point?
Find out how much it would cost to get that Miller. Yeah, I mean, do exactly what you're doing. Find out exactly what it would cost to see how safe that Miller Building is.
Okay.
If we can salvage it, that would be great.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, like you said, there would be, some people against obviously tearing it down because it is kind of a historical building, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the old post office.
Yeah, and if we can keep it intact, I'd like to see that.
Okay, yeah, because if the one architect's right, and it's reinforced masonry, and the building is structurally sound,
Mm-hmm.
that's the obvious way to go.
Yeah, and that's probably our next step, is to find out if it is.
Yeah,
And
because
make a decision from there.
Okay,
I think it kind of spins around that, and then you can talk, if it is structurally sound, then we can start talking about what the next steps for that is, and then all the other properties at the same time, as a kind of a long-term plan. It's kind of how I'd see it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think that's probably the direction from the board. Your next step would be just to find out whether or not it's structurally sound,
okay,
and then we'll go from there.
all right, sounds good.
Okay,
Alright.
great.
Is there public comment on that?
Obviously, it would be better if we know for sure that there's a non-invasive type test, a definitive test to tell, like with the thermal or the, was it a radio?
Radiography or thermography or the other ways
Yeah.
of doing it?
Yeah, because that building predates the Carnegie, which is on the National Register, and you ought to take some consideration into if you decide to tear it down. I think there'd be a lot of community against that, and also what it would do to the Carnegie, which is this far away from it. I think it would cause an awful lot of damage, just the vibration and that sort of thing with the destruction. So I hope with all my heart that it is sound and that that first report was more correct than the others. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business, approval of the minutes from our May 12th meeting.
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And that's all we have for this evening, so our meeting is adjourned.